We good to go? Well, hey, this is kind of a ballot special. We kind of crammed this in, and you were gracious enough to free up some time, and so we're gonna try to turn this around. We'll be a little bit out of order because we got a couple other episodes in the can, as it were, being put together. So, but we want to get this turned around so people can get some information on this thing we're voting on. And so I won't. What I'll start off with is, for people who don't know you, tell me, name, what you do, and tell us a little bit about this levy that we're voting on. And we'll kind of just start there.
Well, thanks for having me first.
Yeah.
I'm Lisa Grant. I am the proud superintendent of the Centralia School District. I have the best job in the world. I get to work with students and staff and community members and families every day to help serve our students. And that's what this levy is about. So school districts run levy to support their programs for students. We get federal and state dollars, but very honestly, not enough to do the things we know we need to do for our students. And so districts run levies for either 2, 3, or 4 years in order to provide the programs that their students need. So this is a replacement levy. It will be for 3 years. Collection will begin in 2027, January 1st, 2027, and then it would be collected 2027, 2028, 2029. And the current levy that we have will end December 31st, 2026. So then this one, we begin collection as soon as one ends.
Okay. And so we'll start here. So where are you from? What's your kind of how'd you end up here doing this?
Good question. I never thought I'd be a superintendent.
Yeah.
So I was a teacher. I, from a young age, wanted to teach. I remember an experience in middle school with my grandmother volunteering with some students that received special ed services. And I remember thinking, that's what I want to do. So I became a teacher, special education, mainly middle school and junior high, but also some elementary. And then I loved it, and I loved the impact in a classroom, but I was fascinated by the impact you could have in an entire building. And so I went back to school, UW, go Huskies, to get my master's in educational leadership, and I became a principal. And then for family reasons, my husband and I moved to Florida for 14 years, and I was a principal there. And when we were moving back to help, we needed to be closer to my in-laws to help take care of them. They lived in Centralia, so we started looking at Centralia. Yeah. And there was an opening actually in Mossy Rock and for a superintendent, and I applied on a whim, and then I got it. I never thought I would be a superintendent. So I was in Mossy Rock for 5 years, loved the community, loved it, but Centralia opened up. We lived in Centralia, loved the idea of a bigger system, and wanted to be able to contribute to my own community because my job is really a job of service in my mind. And so I was blessed enough to get that job, and this is my 6th year in Centralia.
Okay. So, yeah, so I just, and I'm sure nobody cares about this, but I'll just recount because we were talking about this a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I went to Ford's Prairie, and then I went to Oakview from there. And then I don't think there's one in between that, right? No, it's Ford's Prairie, then Oakview. And then I went to Centralia Middle School, and I went to Centralia High School for my freshman year. And then ended up going over to Chehalis for a couple years. And then I did Running Start. And so I did my senior year. This was right when Running Start was starting to run and do its thing. So I did that for my senior year and ended up graduating from there. So I kind of went around all over the place. And so, we've been, I was born in Centralia Hospital. So we've been around here a long time. I did spend a little time in New York, as we were talking a little bit before about. But so how did you, because as I kind of came back from New York, I kind of had this vision in my mind about how Centralia was going to be when I came home. And it was very different from the Centralia that I remember growing up. And so, and I think, that's one of the things I'm kind of interested to hear from your perspective. When you took this thing over, or you began leading Centralia School District. Well, actually, let me start with this real quick. Let me back up. What, for people that don't know, because this is something we really want to do with this show, is kind of help us all understand a little bit more how all this stuff works, because I don't think any of us really know as well as we should, or as we'd like to. So what exactly does a superintendent do? What is your responsibility? And like when somebody becomes a superintendent, what are the impacts that, I mean, this is also just for people who may aspire to be a superintendent.
Right.
Like how this may or may not be, if they don't know ahead of time, is it different than what you thought it would be, or you kind of knew because you were in Mossy Rock already?
Right. Yeah, it's different, I think, than you kind of expect. You are in charge of the entire system. So in our case, that's 8 schools. And you report to the board. So like as a teacher, your boss is the principal. As a superintendent, your boss are those 5 elected board members. So they are voted in, you are hired, they act as one, and you are their employee. So I have the honor of working with 5 people. At the same time, I don't know, that's a unique kind of situation when you walk into it. So I supervise like the principals and the directors and the people in charge, and have people working with me as a team. But in the end, you're the responsible for what's happening in your district, right? You help with the board set the vision and then the systems and implementation of how all that works every day. So you go from the board to the superintendent, then to your district staff and principals, to your teachers, and to all the other staff that are helping you, transportation, maintenance, finance, food service, all those that help contribute to success for students and staff each day. You help make sure everyone has what they need to do their best work.
Yeah. So
and then you deal with all the problems and complaints.
Well, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of like a GM of a sports team. It's
exactly.
You're running not just, you're not just hiring staff and all that stuff. You're coordinating a lot of the sports stuff, or you hire the person who coordinates those things, and you kind of monitor that. If I'm on the right page here.
You are.
And then, yeah, same with food and all the other programs. You would kind of establish the leadership that would kind of carry out the overall vision. And then you get some of that, or a lot of that direction. I mean, I think this is something I'm a little interested to know, because when I came back, one of the things that became clear to me, especially, so we moved back right before COVID happened.
That was right before I got hired.
Yeah.
It was an interesting time.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I think a lot of people realized during that time is, man, who we have in local government's a really big deal. and that has a huge impact on our lives. So I mean, and I have friends all over the country. I mean, even some friends that I know internationally, and we talk about some of these things that, our local government has a lot to do with how our daily lives play out, a lot more than we think. Yep. And yet everybody spends a lot of time thinking about, national politics, and that has some effects, but not the same direct daily effect as your local. And so one of the things that had never occurred to me is that a lot of these positions aren't elected. Like, I didn't even realize that and I don't know this is standard, but our police chiefs aren't elected. They're hired by the city council. So it would be the same type of situation in your position, right? Like you elect your school board, and then your school board hires your superintendent, and then that would be the accountability structure in that way. So how is that? I mean, I don't know how candid you're willing to be, and I don't want to get you in any trouble, but how is that when you have school board members kind of coming in and out, maybe different from the ones who hired you? And it seems like that'd be a tricky thing to navigate. I feel like for law enforcement people that I know, that's a really tricky deal. Like, I know we had Tracy Murphy on, and we talked about, he's running for sheriff, and we talked about that. And one of the things he talked about was how, as a sheriff, you're not beholden to other politicians. You're really just working directly for the voter base, which, has some advantages to it. If you're hired by other elected officials, it can be a little more dodgy, I feel like.
Yes.
Yeah, like so yeah, describe that to me a little bit, or how you manage to, I mean, obviously you got to work with all kinds of people, so it just is what it is, but how do you kind of...
Well, that's kind of the fun of it at
Yeah.
times, right? Like, so yeah, no one's on the board anymore that was on the board when I was hired.
Yeah.
And I think 3 years later there was only one left because of people resign or every cycle, you know, it's a 4-year term, but every 2 years, at least 2 or 3 people are transitioning or up for re-election.
Yeah.
So it is an ongoing work of kind of forming a team and then also understanding individuals and how those strengths come to that team. We have 5 strong, diverse, and unified school board members on our board. I've seen in districts it go badly.
Yeah.
And a couple new board members come on and suddenly you don't have a job anymore, right?
Yeah.
But also, like, I remember when I was hired, it's a matter of fit, right? Like, do I match, are my strengths what this district needs right now? Do I match with the beliefs and vision of this board and this district and where they're going? And so you also have to be conscious of that, because if that shifts dramatically, you have to say, are we the right team to do this work?
Right. Yeah. Is this a good fit for everybody?
Yeah.
Which I think is good. I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think it you see this often where people get into these positions and it's like, I get into a position, but then the mood on the board shifts dramatically, and maybe now it doesn't align with my value system, but I don't want to lose my job. And then people start to change, and then it usually, when you're trying to be somebody that you're not, that typically doesn't go well.
No, it doesn't.
Because you can't, like, how far can you usually ever take that? So, yeah, that seems like that would be tricky. But I mean, I guess, and I've always felt like that with places. Like, if we get into a situation where somebody's going to ask me to do something unethical, I'll just leave.
Right.
I can work all kinds of places. So
I think too, like, if someone's trying to get on a school board, let's say, or any elected position, sometimes they're doing it because they're not happy with what's happening. So if that's happening out there, we have to be cognizant of the beliefs and how our community's feeling about the work we're doing in our district. So if something's going on, we should be paying attention to that and addressing it before we get to that point too, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and that's not always true, but I mean, we are here to serve students, but we have to be responsive to what our community wants from our school district at the same time. And so we have to pay attention to that. And if we're not, then people should be running, right, for that position and saying what's happening here.
Yeah. And do you find that's kind of more often than not the case, that people are running because they're unhappy with something? Or do you find that a lot of it's just turnover because of terms or people wanting to move on and do something else?
I think it's a mix. Or people want to contribute in their community and they see an opportunity.
Yeah.
Maybe that they didn't know, because people don't always understand what school boards do, or like city councils or local government. And I think you're right. They impact our day-to-day lives. And so people think, well, I want to give back. Here's a way I could give back. And kids are important. I'll work on the school board.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that stuff's, I mean, we know several people personally that are teachers in the area, and people that have been on school boards or routinely come to school board meetings. And so all that stuff's been, I'm sure, pretty lively over the last while. And I think that is one thing that I think as communities, it feels like, there's a lot of outside noise, and a lot of it too. I mean, we just, when we were talking to Sarah, a lot of it too, it feels like there's a lot of outside noise on like a national level that ends up creeping into your community, and and I don't want to minimize it or give it too much credence, and I want to kind of stay balanced on it, but it may not all be even applicable to us, like what we're doing here. And so a lot of people will get pretty hyper about a lot of things that maybe aren't even happening in the area, or maybe will never happen, or things that they think they should be upset about, or and we let a lot of that stuff kind of creep in. And so I'm sure you see a lot of that stuff on the school level. But and I won't even make a comment on that.
No, I can comment because
yeah.
we do. And I think we've tried, and our school board has asked for this. Like each month, we try and take a topic and say, this is what you may be hearing out there nationally.
Yeah.
But here's what's happening here. And here's where to get more information. Or if you have questions or concerns, because you're right. And then people get confused or they get misinformation because they're hearing something either on social media or nationally on the news. And we're trying to protect from some of that actually some of the time and say, all right, our values in our community and our needs of our students are this. So while we need to be cognizant of that, we need to focus and protect our kids right here and do these things.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a little complex to do. But,
yeah, 100%.
But absolutely, we've seen that happen.
Yeah. So getting back to the levy, because I don't want to get too far away from it, but I do appreciate that because I think it's good for us all to get a much better. So something I see just in the things that I do around here is that like oftentimes people don't even know who they're supposed to be mad at if they're upset about something. People show up to the wrong meetings and yell at the wrong people a lot. So and that's fine. It doesn't bother me, but it would be better for everybody if they were at the right stuff. And so I think helping us all understand how these things work and what the structures are, it just makes it a lot better for all of us. But getting to the levy. So there are levies that are additional, and then there's levies that are replacement levies, right? And that's basically the two types you'll ever see on a ballot.
Well,
or am I not right on that?
There's a couple other types.
Yeah.
Mainly, those are the main ones. That's all we have.
Yeah.
That's all most of our local districts have. Districts can run transportation levies, capital levies, technology levies for additional money. This is called an EP&O. So it technically is to bridge the gap between what I know the state fully funds education, but they truly don't fully fund education. So what are the other funding that we need to help provide the services we need for our students?
Yeah.
That's this one. Some of those other specialized ones, and there are in Thurston County, quite a few districts have some of those types of levies.
And those would be school-directed technology transportation.
By the
so
district,
on and
right.
Okay.
But it's the same process of voting for a levy and then assessed on your property taxes.
Yeah. So go into that a little bit, because I don't think this is another thing I hear a lot, that people aren't total, and this changes so often. So if you're a normal person, it doesn't make any sense for you to know it, but
it's confusing.
I totally get it. And if you're not dealing with it all the time, so explain what you mean by the state not being able to fully fund what we're doing, and how that works.
So the main source of our revenue in districts in our state is the state. And we get an amount per pupil, per student, fully enrolled. We call it FTE, full-time enrolled student. You get an amount from the state that is intended to provide the services you need to provide. So they have a model for that. It's called the prototypical, but it doesn't allow for everything.
And how is that the same at every school, or is there like a sliding scale for different communities?
There is some sliding to it based upon cost of living. That happened in that McCleary decision a few years ago.
Yeah.
But and then we have federal dollars for certain programs like Title I. So they're very categorical and tied to specific things. So they'll let local levy dollars pay for things that other things can't or don't fully cover. Security. The state doesn't pay for us to have an SRO, a school resource officer, or a security officer. We don't have an SRO in Centralia, but we do have a security officer. Mm-hmm. And it is one of the things our parents and community has told us. This is, kids can't learn if they don't feel safe and if we don't have a safe environment. So the levy helps fund that. Athletics is important. In and of itself, it's good for kids, but also it helps kids involved in some school activity like athletics have better attendance, better grades, and less behavior issues.
Yeah, for sure.
And they end up doing better after high school, after school. It gives a sense of belonging. You learn leadership, discipline, all those things. There is no other funding other than local funding for things like athletics. Okay. Music is partially funded from the state, but for example, we have strings and band and choir at the high school, and we build up from elementary to offer those. We would love more band in elementary. Most of that is not funded at the state level. So if you want those things for students, which we know are good for them, for example, kids in music do better in math, all those things, and it's good. They create great opportunities for kids to learn. Levy dollars support that. Things like instructional support. So if kids are struggling, how do we have additional support for them? That is not all funded by the state. There's some funding for that, but not enough for our needs.
Yeah, and just to break in there for a second, so when you say struggling, like what are we talking about?
So, well,
like
a couple of things.
Struggling academically, or we're talking struggling socially?
Both.
Right.
So we have seen in the last several years students with lots of behavioral and social struggles. We know across our country, but in our community also, there's increased kind of anxiety among kids, increased suicide ideations, those kind of things. So how do we have supports for that? Students that might not come to school with behaviors to function successfully in a classroom, how do we have supports for that to allow them to learn and all kids to learn? And then also academically, if kids are behind or they're struggling, some students that receive special ed services, we are required to use local dollars to help support special ed services that are legally required, and we should. But then also some students maybe that just need some extra support in, let's say, math or reading in order to be on level or get to level.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've talked about, and I always feel like one of the big challenges that we have politically right now is that I feel like because of the way we've decided to structure things just on a general level and the emphasis that we've put on certain things, we're now asking teachers and schools or people who work at McDonald's or whatever to get involved in things that's not really their job. It's historically not been part of something that they do. And so, there's a lot of things that, I mean, man, it goes so far beyond what you can do with a levy, or, I mean, to put this toothpaste back in the tube is just like, I don't even know how you'd start to do it. I mean, I have my opinions on that, but it's not anything that you can legislate.
Right.
And that's the hard thing for people to wrap their head around, despite what you may think, the government cannot solve all your problems. I don't know if breaking news, but we were looking at a property that we were going to do some work on up in Lakewood, and we went to a taco time, because we're waiting for the manager to get there to open up some stuff, and there was an issue with somebody that, obviously got some addiction issues, probably living on the street. And I just thought, I'm in there, and, we kind of went out just to make sure nobody was going to get hurt. But I thought, man, we're asking people who are getting minimum wage who, push buttons that have pictures on them that look like the thing you asked for, like they've got a pretty straightforward job. We're asking them to be, police officers and do all these tasks. We're asking them to get involved in aspects of society that, like, when I worked at Baskin Robbins, like, I just scooped ice cream and rang people out, and that was
smiled,
it.
and they were happy. Yeah.
No, I didn't do that. I didn't do a lot of smiling, but anybody that knows me, when I was 16, but no, I probably smiled a little bit. I do my best. But I mean, that's all I was worried about, like making sure the door was locked. I mean, I wasn't worried about all these other issues. And so I've known several people who have been in the school district, and some have tried to stick it out. Some have been like, it's just too much for me, and they've left. So I think that's a dynamic to all this, because one of the things I'd like to go through with you a little bit, because I think, and maybe we'll do it in this order, because I think that would kind of give you the last word on it. But I'd like to go through a few things that I either have thought myself or I've heard from people, and just give you an opportunity to kind of address those things, because I think some of them are valid, some of them may not be fair. And, there's a lot of people, obviously, there's it's been difficult to pass these things around here. And so one of the things that I hear a lot of, and I think we've addressed it a little bit, but there's definitely a tax fatigue. that people have. And they just go, man, how much more of my money can people take? And I know that just gets generally applied to everything. So maybe address that a little bit, because, every ballot that we get, it's pretty much like somebody goes, can I have some more of your money? And
Yes.
and so that's a lot of what people get to. And I think to piggyback on that, there's the tax fatigue that I think people have, but then there's a lot of mistrust about how tax dollars get spent, because you see these things all the time in all different kinds of institutions. Wherever there's a concentration of money, you will get, I've heard people talk about this, but it's like when a whale dies and sinks to the bottom of the sea, all of a sudden there's a sudden infusion of resource, and then all the scavengers come. It's not the hunters that go eat that stuff; it's the scavengers. So the trouble with a lot of government funding is that you get these infusions of resources that are difficult to track, and then scavengers intrude and start to erode at the confidence that people have in different institutions. And maybe not, I'm not aware of personally anything here, but just the amount that you see everywhere, people just go, man.
Yeah, I think it creates skepticism in people's mind, right?
Yeah.
I'll start with tax fatigue and then go to that trust. And yes, I think there is tax fatigue. And yet we have to run a district. And so our board, and we grapple with this all the time. How do we balance serving our students who are coming with more complex needs than ever before? You just mentioned that. Mm-hmm. It's true. The work of teaching is becoming more complex. And then with the needs of our taxpayers and community members. And so our board and our team, we have really worked at analyzing that and trying to find, how do we keep moving our district forward? We have some challenges in our district. We've been making improvements. We've been doing some things really well. We have much more work to do. We're not happy with where we are in things. And yet we're also coming from 6 years ago where we didn't have trust. We had a large levy failure that loud and clear the community said, what are you doing? And we're angry. We're upset.
Yeah.
You're not doing the work we need you to do. And so we've been working on that. So we've tried to find that balance between what we know we need to keep making improvements and to do our best to serve kids so they can come back and help our community flourish in the beginning. And having strong schools helps business come here, which diversifies and helps spread the tax burden. Mm-hmm. And so it's more shared. So that helps all of us with our community. So that's why we don't ask as much as many districts. If you look at comparisons, we're lower than most surrounding districts in what we're asking in per thousand. Now, we also know that doesn't mean it's not hard for many people to pay it. So we tried to find that and be sensitive to that. And that's the local tax. There is a state educational tax that they increased in that whole McCleary decision numerous years, about 8 years ago, I guess now, 9, that the state uses to collect funds for education in our state. But that we don't control those dollars either, which is hard.
Yeah.
Then to go to trust. So we have worked to be really transparent. We have a lot of financial information on our website. And for the levy, we have a line item. And you can see
it. So and
we line it out.
Yeah, and so we're and I think we talked about this a little bit, but just to get this out on this episode. So if people want information on this levy specifically, because we're going to try to turn this around as fast as we can so this can be a resource for people, and hopefully you guys can share it and people can get this conversation. But where does somebody go to get the line item on the levy specifically, and then also just on what the school district is doing more broadly
with our budget?
Yeah, just transparently, and if they have those questions.
If you go to centraliaschooldistrict.org, it's there.
Okay.
Yep.
Just right up front.
Well, I think you have to go to the financial page first. And if you can't find it there, man. I know. Layers, 2 clicks.
I know. Layers. I tell governments, I deal a lot with permitting. And I'm like, man.
Don't layer it 10 clicks
energy
in.
codes. Holy cow. It's like you got to have a separate degree just to figure out how to run their Excel spreadsheet.
I know. I think it's no more than 3 clicks to get to the line item. And you can put your property value in.
We'll see if we can find it here real quick and throw it up there.
Okay.
that way make it easier for people to find.
And I can walk people.
I mean,
to it if
everybody's
they need to.
use an Apple, and it's like you hit a button that looks like the thing and it pops up. So,
But you can put your tax value, your assessed value in, and then see what you'd be paying.
Okay.
And what we're asking.
And again, just to be clear, this is not an additional tax. This is I mean, I like using sports terminology, but it's like you got a player that's got an expiring contract, and you're hoping to sign him for the exact same amount. So it's like that's what this particular levy is. It's just a continuation of what we're currently doing.
It is it's called a replacement. It is a continuation. It is a little higher, so it would cost the average homeowner about $7 more per month.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Average being about a $400,000 home.
Yeah, and that's just kind of inflation, which we won't get into inflation, but
that's our flyer that you're showing there, which also has some of that on it. That top right corner right there, you can see that's where we compare. So you can see we are the third from the bottom in the orange, but Olympia, Chehalis, Tenino, North Thurston, Rainier, Tumwater, all higher collection rates than us, which is fine. Every community is different. The challenge for us is that means they have more resources to do more for their kids, and that's where we struggle.
Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of, cost is only an issue in the absence of value, And so, I mean, I make this case to people. I mean, I've been in sales at different points, and it's like, nobody when they go to buy a house goes, I want to find the cheapest house, because it ends up being maybe in an area or in a condition that you don't want to deal with. So, people say that cost is an issue. I don't know that cost is usually an issue for folks. I think it's really because when you go to buy a car, you don't go, oh, make sure I get the roll-up handles and make sure there's no radio and make sure that it's just no carpet, just industrial floor. People don't do that. We all spend more money. We spend as much money as we can to get as much value or even just perceived value as we can possibly find. So that was another thing I was going to kind of get into. And I think the amount of time that you've been there is it'd be interesting to hear your take on it, because I don't think it's any big secret that there's a little bit of a perception issue with Centralia School District from people, especially people who had kind of grown up in the area. And I know you kind of came in and you guys are trying to right the ship on that, I think would be fair to say. I think I've talked to enough people over there that are in the know or high up enough that they're aware, and they're saying, yeah, this hasn't always been run the way that we would like to see it run, and we're making these changes. So that being the case, because I hear this, and I felt this myself. I mean, I've got kids. Our approach to education is we actually find a lot more people are doing this now than we thought. We were just the only weirdos doing this stuff. But we're very like year by year, what's going to be the best fit for this child specifically. So we've got kids in all different kinds of stuff. We've had our kids in public schools for different periods of time. We really try to match teachers up with our kids and make sure that that's going to work. We've taken advantage, and this is one thing that we really appreciate. We've done some homeschooling. One of the things we really have appreciated about the Centralia School District, and we wouldn't know from Chehalis, they may do the same thing, but we've been able to take advantage of certain classes at certain times as a homeschool family, and the district's been really good about that. We plan to do that more in the future as well. So that's been a nice thing, because when we lived in New York, that was not how it was.
Really?
No, they treated you like you were a traitor. It's a very union-dominated society over there in general. As the unions go, so goes. So it's like people are very dug in on like, well, if you're not sending your kid to school, you're stealing money from me, and it's just a very adversarial type environment on that end. And I get everybody's got their. I mean, it doesn't make me upset. Everybody's got their interests that they're trying to protect. We don't view it that way. And we've found that. So just for that to be on the record. Good. So we've kind of moved in and out. We've taken advantage of different private schools at different periods of time, and those haven't always been the right fit every year for every kid either. as leadership changes and teachers change and philosophy on teaching changes and all that kind of stuff. So we've been kind of all over the map on it. So there's been times where we felt like, I don't know if I'm willing to do that this year in one school or one area. Take me through a little bit, like when you came on board and the things that you saw and the things that you were hearing from the community and the teachers and all the folks who are involved, and what tangible steps you guys have been able to make. Because I think this is something that we, do unfairly as well. It's like in, like some of these really bad sports franchises, they'll hire a coach and they'll fire him like the next year because they didn't win the Super Bowl. It's like, well, you don't have any good players on your team because you won 2 games last year. So I think we do that a little bit. We don't give people enough time to, and especially in these environments, I think I've got a lot more grace for the political environment, having been on, the planning commission. I realize how long it takes to do anything. And I don't know if it's
frustratingly long at times.
So I think that's something that's good for people to hear. Because like in my world, like I need to get stuff done. I need to get tangible movement every day, like big movement. Otherwise, like there's a lot of competition and people can just move. You have a little bit of a captive audience on to some degree. And you've got governmental and legislative and all these different entities that you're dealing with. So take me through a little bit of that just to try to provide some perspective so people can get an appreciation for what if we think this is a turnaround from one thing that we're trying to go a different direction, which I think that's mostly what I hear from people is we're trying to head a different direction here than maybe in the past. Mm-hmm. How long does that take? What are the barriers? Like, can you provide some perspective just so people can kind of maybe attempt to appreciate or wrap their head around how long it takes to go from one point A to point B?
Longer than I'd like, very honestly. That's probably my biggest frustration is that some of this change that we're trying to make is taking longer than maybe I want it to or thought it would. So we are trying to truly do turnaround work, whatever you want to call it, to transform our district. When I started, I don't think any of us liked where we were. I know our community was telling us that. I was hired in February of 2020, but to start July 1st of 2020. So
yeah, it's a fun time.
It was. It was very interesting, but also we learned a lot through that, right?
Yeah.
So when I started, I did over 100 interviews with individuals and groups to try and understand what was happening. And right after I got hired was when we had that first double levy failure. And I think to me that was kind of a wake-up call of, well, obviously there's things happening here that are deeper than we're thinking, and we need to address them. So there were issues of the finances, spending in the red. You can't do that in any organization. We are now fiscally sound in very fiscally challenging times. The levy is important to that process and that stability, but our board and our district has really worked to be fiscally transparent, but also good stewards of those public dollars that we have, because everything we have is a public dollar.
So do you know roughly, just to cut in real quick, where you guys were at spending wise before and where you're at now? Like what kind of a move have you been able to make so far? So
for 3 years previous to when I started, they were spending in the red. So they were spending more each year than the revenue they had.
Do you know approximately by how much?
Well, that first year they had to cut $12 million.
Okay.
So some of that was from levy, but some of that was because if you're going about $3 million every year into what we call like your savings account, your general fund balance, you can't spend every year into your savings account and survive. You have to live within your means. So
I've never been able to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, we don't have a credit card.
We're gonna keep at it though.
That's
See if we can. No,
and
no,
we
that's
we
not a
don't
good
get
way to.
we don't get national debt either. We have to balance.
Yeah.
So we now
you guys don't have a money printing machine.
No,
somewhere?
we don't. I wish. Yeah, maybe that'd be a good CTE project in high school. Yeah. No, but so we have maintained a general fund balance. We try and do it between 3% and 5%. We try also to take care of our facilities. So how do we make sure every year you spend that out of a different budget called capital? How do we transfer into that? How are we planning for the future and then also taking care of right now and being financially stable.
Yeah. So when you came in, just for clarity, the district was about $3 million per year in the red, and they were just kind of, that was a pretty
They were
steady,
eating away at their savings.
Yeah. And then you guys have been able to get to where you're actually able to have budget left over to put into the funding that you need for capital facilities, or
Yeah,
you in that?
It's not really leftover, but we're planning for those things to take care of long term.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you were a family doing a budget, this would be set aside for savings.
Right.
And then you're spending that on, the window that doesn't work, or the car
the
that's
new roof we
down.
need, the new fire alarm system we installed in the middle school. Yeah. Those kind of things.
This is another thing that I hear a lot, and I don't know if it's still going on. I assume that it is, that the school district has kind of a spend it or lose it kind of referendum when you get money. Are they still doing that?
For some funds, that is true.
Yeah.
Especially certain categories of funds that if you don't spend it, you do give it back federally and at the state level. So we do watch that, because again, that's not being a good steward if you're not spending what they give you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I always feel like it's such a, everything kind of rises and falls on incentive structures, and it's just not a very good incentive structure to go, even if you don't need to spend this money, you better spend it. Otherwise, you don't do that with your kids.
No, you don't.
So
it's not smart.
You don't do that with your own budget. So it's not a great incentive structure but I know you guys don't have any control over that.
We don't. And I think the theory is, if you have kids in front of you, you need to be spending the money we're giving you on those, but you also have to plan for a future as a district and those future needs.
Well, and it doesn't incentivize
being smart.
Yeah,
no,
it doesn't.
You don't, no. Yeah.
And I'm always, this is one of my favorite Thomas Sowell quotes, but everything is based on incentive structures. If you have bad people with good incentive structures, they will tend to still
make better
good
decisions.
Yeah. If you have really bad incentive structures and good people in there, they may be able to figure out how to still do the right thing, but it's really difficult. And a lot of times they just turn into people that end up doing the bad thing, because there's not a lot of good options.
Right.
So it's like, that's one thing that I really wish there was a way that we could figure that out. And that stuff happens more at the state level,
it does.
right? That
state
would be,
and federal. Yeah.
So if somebody's voting and they go, well, I don't like some of these things that are put onto our local schools, what are the positions that they need to look at that where they do have a vote, maybe where they can, because one of the things that I want to give, especially you guys, an opportunity to say is like, look, if you don't like some of the things that are happening, we're kind of with you on that. Maybe look at the, at this thing that you can vote for, this person that you can vote for, and make sure that, and contact these people. And maybe don't take that frustration out on the Levy vote or on your school
students?
board or whatever. And maybe there's a better place to put some of that ire. Is that?
Yes, and I would say call us, because if it's a local thing, we want to know. I think that's one of the other things we've really worked on is if there's an issue, please tell us. We need to address it so we can get better
and where
communicate
do people,
more clearly.
They go to the website and there's a
place. There's a place for the levy. There's also a place to put in a concern or question. My phone number's on there. My email's on there. And that's on the front page. No clicks. No extra clicks.
Perfect.
I'm happy to give you my email. Give out my phone number. We would rather people call and ask us questions or share concerns.
Afterward, just text it to me. We'll put it in the description.
We'll do that.
That way people that see it can find it there.
I think if we could go back to like the changes we're trying to make. That's there's two other areas. One is kind of culture and communication, trying to be clear in our communication, share what's happening in our district, address concerns. At every level, my level, superintendent, the building, the classroom, so that we can partner with families and with community members to help serve our kids. And so we've been working on that. It's an ongoing work. So if people have ideas, we'll take them. I think the third and the most frustrating for me that we're really focused on is we are not okay with our current academic outcomes. We've made some growth in them, but it's been small. It's in the right direction. We're trying to study the things we're doing or the things that should be helping us. But I think that's one of the things that it will continue to move forward, and we will be able to accelerate it as we move forward. But I had hoped we would move some of those needles faster academically.
Yeah.
I mean, it is true. We're not where we want to be in that, and we don't want to hide it, but we are working to address it. And there's specific things we're doing to try and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, again, I mean, it's so easy to take shots at school districts. There's a lot going on there. But yeah, I mean, I do think there's a certain point where there's only so much you can do. It's kind of you can lead a horse to water thing, right? And, you don't know, there's a lot of environments like we were talking about that kind of get put upon a school district. And so I think there's some stuff there where I think, maybe the ire should be directed in some other directions. There's so many things going on that create this stuff. And then you guys are just kind of the end user on all of it.
That's true.
And you're trying to make lemonade out of.
And I think we can direct out of
else.
We're making lemonade out of all sorts of stuff
Yeah.
these days. And I think, to get back to your question, I don't think I answered it fully. Like, they can call us and we'll help, but I think our local legislatures are very open and willing to fight for things that our community believes we should be. And I know they are right now in this legislative session.
Mm-hmm.
But also even our
like
local.
What groups?
So
like specifically?
like let's say our representatives, Representative Abarno and Representative Orcutt and Senator Braun, they're up there trying to propose legislation and fight against legislation that doesn't fit the values of our community, very honestly. So I think they want to hear from people on those issues, at least when we've talked with them. Yeah. And if it's beyond schools and it's like, I don't know, if it's roads, then I think city council would want to hear. And we partner with all those groups around those pieces to try and at all those levels help make sure, we're addressing things for our kids, but also our community.
Yeah. Yeah. So another thing that I think I hear from people, and again, like, the more I think about it, the more I think some of this is just, it's kind of like, when your spouse is mad at somebody else, but you're like the only other person in the room. And so you just kind of get a little bit of that. I think sometimes, these local things become kind of a whipping post for other things that go on. But I think there is a lot of kind of, let me see how to kind of address this. But I think there's a lot of people that go, we see stuff nationally, and maybe even, I don't know of any of this stuff happening locally, so I don't want to make that sound, but there's stuff in Washington for sure, where there's a lot of things, a lot of pretty squirrely things going on. People, there's a sense, and we had some of this in New York too, where there's a sense that people are concerned that schools don't view their kids as their kids. They kind of view them as the school's kids. There's a feeling that people get concerned that, like, I don't know if, because we've heard of things happening where all kinds of stuff's going on and the parents are deliberately left out of it. And I remember some of this stuff when I was going to school, just things that we knew as kids. I don't know how much the teachers or any of this stuff knew, but there was some crazy stuff going on, and I don't know if, who knew about it. So I think there's a little bit of a feeling of that, and you see this in other states. You see it definitely in our state as well.
We do.
And so I wonder how much of this where people go, I'm really concerned about some of the stuff happening at the state level and with some of the state level administrators in education. How much of that can we, because people, I think, so is that going to happen here? Are we around the corner from that? Do we have people actively pushing back against that in our school district? There's, the boys and girls school sports issues. People are, and I think people are, I think that's something that people are concerned about, but it's also, it's the bathroom stuff and some of those stories that you hear. And so they go, well, are we doing that? Because I'm not sure if I would know. And if it did show up, like, how is that going to get handled? I think there's a kind of a general mistrust of government education And so there's some hesitancy there with some of the things where, and it's not to say that, there's, I think the issue becomes that, we've talked about this a couple of times too, where it seems like the government is kind of constantly putting people in positions to be at odds where it doesn't actually have to be that way. I think that you can treat people that are having these issues in their life respectfully, and you can address those things without it overriding the rights of other people to the spaces that they want to
Right.
be feel safe and all those kinds of things. So how do you navigate that, and then what can you say to people? I know I'm going to get you in all kinds of trouble. No, but I think these are
they're
things
important
that
questions.
that people think about.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anybody that says, well, if there's a kid that is trans, that we want to ostracise them or kick them out of school or treat them poorly. But they go, what? But I don't know if I want, while they're dealing with that, I don't know if I want my daughter to be in the same bathroom as that person. Not even necessarily because they think anything terrible is going to happen. It's just
They don't want them exposed to that.
Yeah, that's just maybe not the appropriate way to handle that situation.
Right.
So how do you navigate all that stuff where you can kind of walk and chew gum at the same time? Because I think that's been the big issue. It's like we kind of societally keep taking, we've got kind of this hierarchy, and we go, well, this person's needs more care than this person. And I don't know that, I feel like that's a false choice. We should overcare for this person and let them do literally anything they want at the expense of somebody else.
Yeah.
I think you can do both.
Right.
I think there's a way to do it. And so how do we kind of serve all those areas and do it in a way where everybody can feel like they're being taken care of, they can go to school and learn, because after all, that is the point.
It is. I think sometimes we get distracted from that with all that
100%.
other noise. And so we try and focus on that. We are here for this right
Yeah.
here. A safe environment where kids can learn and feel good, feel like they belong, and learn like the reading, writing, the math, the science, right? That
Yeah.
we need them to learn, and how to be good citizens. And so we do walk a tightrope there sometimes around what the state may demand from us and that legally require of us, and then what we think is the right thing to do. So often we'll do legally, but then also how are we making sure that isn't in any way impeding the rights of anyone else? So how do we work through this in ways that help? So, most of our bathrooms all have separate stalls now if we have to do that. Or we work with the individuals to say, we have to do this in a way that values the rights and the perspectives of everyone who might be different. So there are challenges in that at times. It
Sure.
isn't what you hear everywhere.
Right.
And we don't have as much of it as in some places. I feel like, especially in our state, though, sometimes that feels pushed. Our board has talked about that a lot.
Okay.
So we have policies in place that, meet the legal demands, and then how do we implement those in ways that, like the example you gave, that allow every kid to feel like they can walk in a bathroom or a classroom and feel they're there to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Without having, again, I think everybody can have their opinions on all this stuff. But I don't know that we have to have all those opinions everywhere about everything,
In the classroom.
Yeah.
or in a school.
We can go, hey, can we just, can we deal with some of this stuff? Can we just get to some sort of consensus where kids can show up and learn, and we don't have to make everything the biggest deal,
Yep.
in the world?
I think an area that people could get behind and maybe support is, there was an initiative for that parents' rights a couple years ago, and then last year in the legislature that got kind of revamped fairly significantly.
Yeah.
And there was a new initiative or another set of signatures that they got enough on across our state to take it back. And the legislature has not acted on it at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so I think some pressure to help them act on it. There were pieces in that I know we thought reflected the values in Centralia and in, I think, our area, and that fit parents knowing what's happening. I mean, parents are entrusting their babies to us every day. They are the first teacher and parent, and in my mind, we try and partner with them, right? We can't do something outside of the parent. They're responsible for that child. And so how do we work in partnership anyone that wants to be active in that work, I think we could help them find that avenue to help with that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think those are kind of, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of speak on that, because I do hear stuff like that all the time where they
So
go,
do I.
I don't even know what I'm sending my kid to necessarily. And so there's not a lot of conversations like this happening, broadly, where everybody, you don't get a lot of nuance. It's like an article here, an article there, and that's not the paper's fault. It's just how many words can you put in an article? So,
and it's not the stuff that sells papers, right? Like it's not the juicy stuff.
It may not be the thing that makes people watch podcasts either. So I guess we'll find out.
That's true. We will.
But
I also would say, like, we give tours of our buildings. If you are wondering, let's walk through a building.
Yeah.
I help lead those, so we can talk, we can ask questions, because you're right. It's hard to find that information, and sometimes a conversation about it helps.
Well, yeah. And, obviously if an entity, or if an institution loses trust, it's like once that trust is gone, it's really hard to claw that back. And so, I think that takes both sides as in any relationship. You gotta, if there's new people in place, if there's changes being made, then I think it's incumbent on us to, as citizens, to try to get to know what those are. It's so hard because you see people in public life just lie to your face constantly, and you go, well, who can I trust? And maybe it's nobody, but if you're a citizen, I think at some point we have to decide, well, let me just get to know the people involved. And I think especially at our local level, you actually have access to do that. I mean, I've never talked to anybody on this show that hasn't been like, I'll just put my phone number out there and anybody can call me, which, I've said a million times, like, I didn't even know that was a thing you could do. So now people know, or hopefully some people will know. But I think those are good to, we got to get a little bit more active, a lot bit more active as citizens. I think we need to, we say this all the time, like, get registered. If you're in high school, you can pre-register.
Yes,
I found out.
We do that. We have our kids, our students in,
they're doing that at, so I have a daughter that's at WF West. They got the same thing there. They're like, they have this assignment. They can do all these different civics things. And one of them is you can pre-register.
And then you're all set. When you turn 18, they send it to you. It's cool.
Yeah, and so, step one is just get registered, and then just vote. Even if you don't feel like you have enough information, just start voting. Ask the smartest people you can find, get whatever information, just start to build off that. I mean, if you're waiting around to 100% know everything about every issue, you'll never vote. So just do as good a job as you can. Man, I mean, the amount of times that I've voted and then found out more information down the road and been like, I don't know if I would have done that had I known. But
or call us. We'll answer your questions before you vote, because last week it was less than 5% of the voters in Centralia had submitted their ballots.
Yeah, and
so please vote.
And so, what is that number? Like, how many people are deciding this at this point?
Yeah, I don't know, because they'll do a count. We won't know that till next Tuesday.
Yeah. So do you have to meet like a certain threshold? Or it's just a yes, no?
Yes, no. 50% plus one vote is what you have to do. It used to be previously that you had to meet a certain threshold of the last general election. Now it's just 50% plus one vote of whoever votes.
Okay. And I don't know if you want to try to look this up while we're talking, but how many registered voters are in the Centralia School District? Do you know off the top of your head?
I want to say it's like 11 or 12,000, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, crazy. Mm-hmm. We used to have that many people on our block in New York. So,
yeah, I bet you did.
Do not recommend. No, it wasn't bad.
There's beauty in Lewis County and Chehalis, Centralia, our area, and in the community that we have. Yeah. What better place to live and work?
Yeah, it's astonishing how few people are deciding these things.
Right. You have voice.
I mean, yeah, so we've got like 11 or 12,000 registered voters. We've got, what is the actual citizenry count? It's
19,000.
19,000, yeah. I should actually know that, but I get everybody's mixed up. So what are we? That's like a third of the people who could vote aren't even registered.
Well, some of those might be not able to. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be some minors and people that aren't able.
But
vote.
still, that's
Yeah,
not
it's a lot
everyone
of
probably
people.
that could vote.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And then, how many people actually vote for a levy, especially one like this where it's the only thing on the ballot.
Yep. We see a smaller turnout. Well, I mean, we hope for 30%. So still, that's less than a third of the people
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
So-
So what you're talking about, like maybe 4,000 people will vote.
Yeah, I should have looked it up before I came, but I think it was something
That's-
like that last time.
Yeah. And then it
Couple
probably
years
got
ago.
decided by like 8 people.
No, it was more than that, thankfully. It was
Yeah.
a little cleaner than that. But
I can't.
well, that's happened recently in local communities
yeah.
around us.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
2 or 3 vote difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about how crazy that is. So
So if it's sitting on your kitchen counter right now,
Yeah.
send it in.
well, I actually have waited until after we could talk to fill this out because I wanted to. So
Oh, that's all of them together? 2, 4, 6, 8.
yeah, so 10,620. So 11,000.
So I was a little off.
You're pretty close. That was way better than my guess would have been. And then, yeah, I mean, how many people? You said about 4,000 will vote for.
I think
something
last
like,
time that's about
Yeah,
how
and
many
that had
were.
other
Might have
ballot
been
stuff
5.
on it too, right?
I think it did.
So this may, yeah.
So.
Anyways, not to belabor that point, but man, it is crazy. Like if you have a dog in this fight,
Vote.
yeah, you need to you need to vote because it really can. I mean, this is one of those things where like your vote really can turn the tide on it. It's pretty crazy. So how much? This is one thing I did want to get to. Do
Okay.
you know roughly how much per student we're getting from the state?
It's about 11,000.
About 11,000. Okay, so that's a little less than what I guess once you add in the other stuff, because I think the average nationwide that we're spending per kid is about 16 right now. Is
and
that?
if you look sometimes on OSPI, you'll see that number or 15.
Mhm.
They calculate different things in that, but what we get per student is about that.
Is about
Yeah.
overall between and then so
Some
you said-
students we get more for if they get special services.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, we have students that cost us $200,000 a year to provide the services we're required to provide, so that skews the average at times.
Right. Yeah. And those are things you're required to provide
They
if
are.
that student lives in your district and they register for your school.
Yes.
Yeah. So and I that's something that I feel like now that you've said it, I sort of know, but I wouldn't have thought too much about that. That there are things, and man, I mean, I see this in my industry all the time. They're always complaining about cost of living, and it's like, well, there are things you can do to help with that. I think it's like it's like almost a quarter of every new home built is all regulatory fees.
Isn't that crazy?
It's so if a typical house is, let's say it's 400,000, 100 grand of that's not going to a board or a nail or anything. It's going to the government, and then who knows? Who knows where it goes
Well, we
from
can
there?
tell you exactly where
so
our
if you
money
go on your
goes.
website, you can know. So, but and this is another argument that I've heard, and I think this is that basically answers the question, which I think is fair because I've heard this. We heard this in New York a lot because I mean they spend exponentially more there. I mean, your property taxes. We lived in a town that was similar to this actually in Long Island for a time, and we had like a 80 by 100 foot lot. I mean, small place. There's all 6 of us were living in less than 1,100 square feet, but it was great. The kids were little, so we got to spend a lot of time with them, and that I actually kind of miss that time personally. But I mean, our property taxes were, I think, I want to say we had a weird, we're in a weird spot, but our neighbors, we actually had something going on where we weren't getting taxed as much. But the average in the neighborhood was about 8,000 a year for,
Wow.
and that's, I mean, teeny
That's a
tiny
tiny
lots
house,
and a
yeah.
tiny house. So, and and those were like okay school districts that we're in, over there. And so the argument that I would hear all the time is like, well, a private Catholic school over there, they're able to, educate a kid for a fraction of that. I think they're spending on average somewhere around 6,000. I think it was about half. And so, but I think that kind of answers the question, is that they don't have those same requirements. You know,
No.
if somebody's got a special need,
They send them to
then
us.
they go,
Right.
because they go,
Right.
well, we just can't
Right.
shoulder that burden.
Or if there's an issue, they have the privilege of saying you don't get to come to school here anymore.
yeah,
We
Yeah.
do not do,
yeah. So
do
you,
that.
even and so maybe, So if you have a behavioral issue, even a major one, you actually can't. What can you do with that?
Figure out how to help that child.
Yeah.
And provide services
Yeah.
that do cost extra resources, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes they can be eligible for things that help us, but still there's a cost there that we're required to do. And I mean, behaviors are probably the most challenging because it impacts not only that child, but everyone around them. And so we have to figure out how to support them, how to have consequences and work with the family, teach them how to behave, because often they just don't know.
Yeah.
And then do something to help make sure every other kid in that classroom or school can also still learn. So, I mean, sometimes that means we have to send them to a different location. Sometimes that means, for a while I had a student working in my office online because we were trying to figure out the best scenario forward and didn't want to just put back in. We're trying to get creative, and flexible, like you mentioned, your families wanted kind of a menu of flexible options to meet different kids' needs. How do we as a district respond to that and create things that will allow us to serve those kids without impeding the kid sitting next to them that wants to focus?
Yeah.
Or can focus and learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, even as we're sitting here talking, I think a lot of times what gets projected onto our local politics is there's a lot of things that either it's mostly the state. I think less so the federal government.
Agreed.
I would say. And I'm a simple man. I don't know everything. I don't know much. I'm trying to figure it out. But it does seem like everybody, a lot of the people that I talk to in local politics, that's kind of the bane of their existence. It's like, we have to run this thing. We get federal funding. There's laws in place that actually require us to do certain things. And so they're always trying to figure out, how to, push back. And everybody I've met, just so people know, I've talked with and worked with a lot of people that when these legislative sessions are going on, they are up there pounding the table for our community.
Yes.
And just because it doesn't work a lot,
no, sometimes it's frustrating how little it works.
Doesn't mean that we don't have people who are up there trying to pound the table for us. And I think even when those less than ideal things come down, I find that we've got a lot of people who are trying to find creative ways to be in compliance technically, but do it in a way where it feels more like something that we can,
where it fits the values of our community.
What our community values the most. So
I would agree.
I see that quite a bit. And so I think it's worth pointing out that it's the same deal for the school district. There's a lot that you guys are contending with that you may, if you were ruling the world of your school, you would not do a lot of these things if you didn't have to.
Agreed.
And so,
the fighting kind of for that local control, because we think, well, it's the state paramount duty to provide public education. That should be decided locally. That's what school boards are for, to work with their staff. And so how do we continue to, be active in the legislature with that so that we can manage as much control or make decisions in our district, in our communities, to impact the families and kids in our communities as we can. Yeah, that's a constant tension, very honestly. Yeah, and so there's one other thing I kind of wanted to get into, and this is more something that I've looked at a lot more personally. But I think I've read some stuff about how anywhere, any town or district that has a strong private school presence, actually the public schools also tend to do much better overall. And I think one of the things that we've seen through COVID especially, I think a lot of people decided to explore that. We've seen some things, some new schools be started. And I know this is sort of competition for you,
But have you seen anything along those lines where it's actually been maybe a benefit, where there's something that you can, because generally competition makes us all better.
I would agree.
Yeah. And
I'm
so,
a little competitive.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Competitive people are awesome.
My goal is we should be the best district in the state, right? An
Yeah.
example. And I agree with you. I think parents have the right to choose what they think is best for their family, their child. And we should create a district, schools, and environment that they want to choose us.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not, then how do we get better so more people are want to choose us, right?
Yeah.
Or that we're providing what they need for their child.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome because, I mean, a lot of times, again, I've lived in a lot of places, and that's not always the attitude that you get.
No.
And I think that's important. I think that is a winning attitude for something. And so I really appreciate that because I think it's good for a district to go, well, I think we can do something to earn these people back into the district.
We have to.
There's a lot of entitlement in a lot of these institutions where they think just because they exist, they should just get all the money and get to do anything they want and all that kind of stuff.
That drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that's one of the challenges and things we have to be careful about with bureaucracy and public funding. Mm-hmm. We have to still get better and better. We can't say we deserve this. I think very honestly, public education won't survive if we don't get competitive and try and improve. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think it's the way everything's heading, and I think it's healthy. And I really hope that it does produce a result because obviously, I mean, almost our entire lives that's never been an option. Even currently, there's times where it's like, man, we can't get everybody into private school, so maybe we can't do that at all. And you gotta, most people, that's not the position they're in. But yeah, if that's the view, I think that's a really healthy view for everybody. And I think, it's kind of the rising tide, lifts all boats.
And I think it
idea.
does.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that, I'm kind of getting all my education stuff in here. So
it's quite all right.
I have a lot of things about that, but I've read some books about how boys and girls learn, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on that because historically we've seen girls on an average get much higher grades than boys on an average, and a lot of people will theorize, and I think it makes sense to me that a lot of it, you have a lot of females who are teachers and who have been administrators, and so it's kind of a female-dominated industry. And just like if you have a male-dominated industry, it's like sometimes they're not thinking about what women need because, I talked about this a couple times. I think it's really interesting that you can tell cities that are designed by men and women based on how much lighting there is. Have you ever heard that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. When women are designing cities, there's, they don't have dark alleys. There's a lot of street lights, all that, because they're thinking, I could be attacked. Guys are like, well, if somebody attacks me, I'll just
take them down.
Yeah, it won't be, it's a different mindset for sure. There's this joke that, when a guy and a girl go on a blind date, the guy goes, oh man, I'm really scared that I hope she doesn't laugh at me. And the girl goes, man, I hope he doesn't kill me.
It's probably true.
So it's like kind of a, it's just a different thing. So conversely, you have one of, this is an industry that's historically been very female dominated. And a lot of the things that I used to see, which I think I'm seeing coming back a lot more now, where boys are able to get their hands on a thing.
Agreed.
They don't have to, because they typically don't learn very well auditorily. Yeah, auditorially.
Sitting and listening in a desk.
Yeah. So, my parents would always be like, I don't know how you get in trouble for talking so much because you never talk in real life. And it's just because I was bored out of my mind. And that didn't even always mean I didn't like what we were doing. It's just I would finish everything early, or I just wouldn't do it at all because it was like this,
Or you're listening for 45 minutes and not doing anything?
Yeah. I don't know if I ever listened for 45 minutes.
Okay, you're supposed to be listening.
That's what they were hoping for.
Exactly.
I don't think that ever happened. But yeah, no. So how, is that something that you guys see? And I know a lot of those kinds of programs typically are the first things that get cut when things like this are happening. And is there, I'm just more interested from an education, this doesn't have anything to do with the levy, but are there ways that you guys have identified where English can be taught maybe in a way where boys, are more interested, or reading, or some of the other, things that typically boys check out on? Is there anything that you've come across or read on that? Because
Yes.
I think it's been nice. Like, you guys have a farming program over at Centralia High School.
We do.
You guys, so maybe go over a couple of those things first before you answer that, because I'd love to know what all you guys have in that vein.
We've been adding and continue to add, and sometimes that's in that CTE, that career technical ed, but also talk about there's other ways, because you're right, historically, I think a lot of what you say. So we do have kind of the agriculture program. We have a business program. We have a store students run. We have video production, as well as like computer science. So a lot of doing in that.
Yeah.
We had national champions in the video production last
very
year.
nice.
Yep, they went to Georgia and won. We have
So,
photography.
well, tell me about that
cooking.
then for a second, because that's a point of pride.
It
So
is.
who do you all compete against at a national level? Is it still based by kind of population? Is it still kind of like a 2A, 3A
So it's
thing,
kind
or
of like
how's that?
sports. You
Yeah.
go. It's not quite like the leagues in that same 2A, 3A, but you
Yeah.
go to. So you do compete against larger schools.
Okay.
You go to competitions at the local and then kind of state, regional, and then you go national to
Yeah.
that level. Yeah. In a variety of things. So all of our different programs that I just mentioned all compete. And some of the specifics, I don't want to get them wrong on what they do, because
That's fine.
these kids are amazing.
Yeah.
But they create things, they present them, they compete even in the ag program with they raise animals and compete locally,
Yeah.
and then sell them or auction
Yeah.
those, and then go compete with other high school students in those pieces, in teams and individually, depending.
That's cool. I mean, that's another thing that we kind of hope to do on this thing, just kind of highlight how much talent there is here.
There's so much.
I think, it's something I talk about all the time, but I remember growing up, the feeling was like, you come from Centralia, you're probably not going to do anything. And that was kind of like, like that was kind of the feeling I got from people. And I was like, well,
We're trying to change that.
yeah, I was like, that's not what I want to do. Yeah, no, and I
Right,
think we've got so many exceptional people.
We do.
I mean, I could list off a bunch of them, and hopefully we'll get a lot of them on here, just to highlight that stuff. But I do hope that this can be something where, we can highlight some of those things. Go, no, there's big things happening here. There's exceptional people that come out of here. There are opportunities to be great.
Yep.
In this area.
Yeah. I forgot. We have construction. We have metals. So we have our construction classes building the community center for the Hope shelter over. So they're building a structure in our community for our community, which is a great experience. For them.
That's
they can't
awesome.
do the electrical and the plumbing, I think, but they can do the rest.
Yeah.
But to go back to your question,
I
historic.
mean, when I was a kid, they let you do anything.
Now we have code. It goes back
Safety.
to those regulations you were talking about. But I think historically, you're right. Teaching was dominated by females, and yet then they tend to teach as they learned.
Yeah. No,
And so now we know a lot more about, the modalities that kids learn from. So boys and girls, like, I'm not an auditory learner. I got in trouble all the time in school for being fidgety and talking all the time. But having so how do we make things visual? How do we get hands-on for things in those classes we mentioned, but also from kindergarten up? How do you have movement in what you're doing? Because most kids can't sit for 45 minutes and sit and listen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, most
I don't learn
adults
that
can't.
way.
I mean,
no.
yeah.
Well, and that's getting shorter and shorter with social media and Twitter and all those things. So I think I would say, because, teaching, it's been predominantly female. Historically in our country, administration has been predominantly male. So also interesting when you think about dynamics of that. But I have to be conscious of that, right? Like, I'm a female leader. I have to get perspectives from other people. male as well as other diverse people to understand and make the best decision. So we have to do that in teaching. How do we understand how kids are learning and then try and have activities beyond that? How are we doing more science labs? How are we doing more hands-on? How are we helping kids not just sit and be read to or read, but, discuss that or create something with what they're studying or act it out? All those pieces can help kids.
Yeah.
You do have to know how, reading is a critical skill, but
Yeah,
there's different ways.
Yeah, I think one of the things that that we've looked at with education is that it's so reading centric. And I know, obviously, the stats are that girls like reading more than boys do.
True.
And I would say that I read more than most people I knew as a boy, but I didn't read a ton. And it was easy for me. I've got, people in my family that have been, had a hard time reading. And, so when everything revolves around that, it's like, oh, well, you're just going to suck at everything we do here.
Which is how kids feel, right?
Right. And and they've, depending on which generation we're talking about, I know lots of stories from previous generations, and then, I've experienced with, younger kids where it's not so many words, but not necessarily not so many words. It's like, well, you're not going to do well here. You can't read very well. Yeah. And it's like, well, there's so much more to learning, and there's so much more to intelligence than, are you good at reading?
Agree.
Especially at a young age, because those things can develop. And
we shut them down in other areas that they're really good at that could be strengths.
Yeah, it's like, well, if you can't do science here, you can't read the book.
Right.
Or you can't do math here, you can't read the math problems. It's like, well, there's other ways to do math. And I know, man, if you can't do one-on-one, that is...
No, but there are other ways.
That is the draw to a homeschool. It's like you can do one-on-one. And I know a lot of times when kids are struggling in those ways, that's a lot of the direction that when we see people go into homeschool, some of it's social, but a lot of times it's like my kid's struggling in an area that the school doesn't really have a good answer for. And so we're going to take, which I think all those things can be good if you don't have to deal with it. Right. And the parent wants to deal with that may not be a bad thing for anybody involved.
No, and if they need, we would partner with, if you need resources to do that, we're here to help you. And then that also tells us, okay, we got to get better at doing that for every kid. So even if you make that choice, it's a choice you're making, not because you feel like you have to, but because those are your options, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would say that our experience on that end has been really good.
Good.
And we have, we've done some homeschooling, we've done some private schooling, we've done some public schooling, depending on the year and the situation, the teachers, and all different kinds of things.
Yeah, and your kids and what they need.
Yeah, we literally will take every year almost and take the temperature on how did that year go. There's been times where we've homeschooled and been like, that needed to probably go better, and then we've adjusted. So, yeah, there's I think there's a lot of ways to skin that cat.
Yeah, agreed.
But I will say, just. Again, we actually have had a really good experience in Centralia so far, and I think as our kids are getting a little older, they'll be even more important, that partnership. Good. And so it's good to know that is the mentality. And I think if anybody else, I don't know how many people are aware that that's the case. If you're homeschooling, if you need extra help, you can go to the district. And
we'll help you figure it out.
And try to partner up, and
for sure.
And maybe that will work. Maybe I don't know, but our experience has actually been pretty good on that stuff. Good. Just to throw it out there.
If people don't know, they can reach out. So again, hopefully this encourages them.
Yeah, we didn't know until somebody told us. You
don't know.
You don't know.
We can't reach out. We are not. We are bound not to reach out.
Okay.
So
there you go.
We can't direct say to homeschool families, "Hey, we're here if you need us."
Yeah.
But. Yeah, if you reach out, we can respond.
But if you ended up on some show somewhere and you could say...
reach out. We're happy to help you.
Yeah,
yeah.
Maybe that'll happen for you someday. You'll be able to go somewhere and say something, and it'd be nice.
People will hear it.
So, yeah, no, I think that's good. And so, I will let you kind of wrap up with, give me kind of your closing pitch on this thing. I'll give you the final word, and then close me.
Okay.
Close the sale. Tell me, and because I think I would like to let you give your, this is what this will do. This is what's in it for you. This is the value for you. I mean, because we hear a lot of stuff like, oh, it sells more houses, it helps businesses, all that stuff.
It does.
Everybody's heard all those things.
Yeah.
And it seems like nobody cares, just to be honest.
Well, I think people care about their own, right?
Yeah. And it's like, not that nobody cares, but people go, well, that's great, but I really care about my
taxes
kid.
And my kids. Yeah.
So,
no, I agree.
So I think, I'm not saying don't make those arguments. And I think most people know those, and I guess I'm really trying to steer this a little bit, because I've heard a lot of the people who have voted no on these things in the past. So that, and they know that argument. I'll just tell you, they've heard that a million times. They go, that's great. I'm not against that, but it's not enough to get me to check yes. So with that in mind, what is the value for everybody on a personal, because ultimately that's what moves somebody is what's in it for me.
And I think, so I have to do all this under the requirement that I can't try and persuade people how to vote for it. That's a legal requirement.
Well, then don't close me. Just tell me.
Well, though I'll still close you.
Okay.
Because I can still say vote.
Okay.
I can say, though, from a district perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously wouldn't be running this if we didn't think it was important. Mm-hmm. We are here to serve our students. I mean, I believe I'm here on this earth to serve, and that's why I do this job. We are not where we want to be as a district. We are a work in progress, but we are making improvements, and we are working to get better in order to help our children. So, which helps everyone, whether you have a kid in our district or not. Yeah. So I think that's kind of what we're about, helping kids, serving kids, being very intentional about the money we have and how we're using it, and to be respectful of, our community and what we're trying to do. And so we can create a better future by what we do now. And I guess that's what's in it for all of us. I mean, I have the pleasure of going to work every day knowing I can make a difference in the lives of other people. Everyone can do that in some way. One way is if you vote.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely do that. Get registered, please.
You could still register. It's not too late.
You can register and vote all at the same time, as far as I understand.
Yes.
So sometimes it's too easy to vote, I hear, but
you don't even have to pay the postage. You just have to put it back in the mailbox.
Easy. So get registered, vote. If you want to get more information, we're going to have some links in the episode where we'll have your contact information. Perfect. If you have questions, if you want to know how the money's being spent.
Reach out. I can't say that enough. We will have phone calls, meet with you, individuals or groups. Please reach out. Yeah.
And if you're going to vote, make a couple calls, make your vote as informed as you can possibly be. I don't know if that information is going to be pertinent, but at least you'll feel good about the way that you voted. I think we all are trying to do that more and more. So thanks for coming on. It was a really good, I really enjoyed that.
Well, I appreciated it. Thanks for having me. I'll talk education any day.
All right. Well, I'm sure there's going to be a time that will come up where something will happen that will require somebody who knows. So we'll definitely have you back on as maybe even after this legislative session.
There you go.
There may be a couple things to talk about.
There might be.
Yeah, there's a rumor. So, okay. Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure, and thanks for going through that with us. And we'll see y'all next time. Thanks.
Thank you.